This week's hand was sent to us by Ashwin Lobo. If you have a suggestion for hand of the week, tweet it at us.
This time around, we have Erik Seidel in a situation he frequently finds himself in. Heads up in a super high roller.
Question. Is Erik Seidel the high roller GOAT?
Greatest of all time?
Indeed.
That's what GOAT means?
That is what it means.
I think he might be.
Blinds are up again. 150,000, 300,000 with a 40,000 ante. We've reached that point in the tournament where it's getting a little shallow. We're going to sweat with Erik Seidel here, which means we're only going to see his hole cards.
Sweating with one of the best in the world. I love it.
Urbanovich completes.
Check.
Seidel's hand is Jack 4 of diamonds. He's checked his option.
I like a free flop with his hand, sure.
Only one diamond on the flop.
Yeah.
Seidel has checked. And Urbanovich checks behind. Oh, there's another diamond. Hello, flush draw.
Finally.
Here comes a bet from Urbanovich, 300,000.
Totally fine with a call here.
There is the call. The river card is a heart. Seidel with just Jack high.
So now we just want a free showdown.
I don't think Seidel's going to get it. Urbanovich bets 525k.
Well, for me personally, this is an insta-fold. I just don't see how we're ever winning here. Yes, we know he tries to win every single pot, but we're losing to some of his bluffs even. But Erik Seidel, not me. He's a really good poker player, and it looks like he's thinking about heroing.
Heroing with Jack high?
Yes, James Hardigan, heroing with Jack high. And you know what? We're going to break it down for you by ranging Urbanovich into value bets and bluffs.
It's going to be sweet. Now,
Also, Jonathan wants to address something that Joe Stapleton said earlier.
that is correct. So Joe says we're losing to some of his bluffs if we're Erik. And that's not very true. There may be just a few jack highs that might decide to bluff this, but queen highs are almost always going to check it back based on the nature of this board and the action, because they assume they're getting called by a 6, and they're basically going to fold out all worse hands and get called by all better almost always. So I think queen highs are going to check. So maybe the random jack 7 or jack 8 is really the only thing we're losing to here. It's not that's bluffing. So I don't think there's very many bluffs at all.
Right. That certainly does suck when you make a hero call and you lose to a hand that your opponent thought they were bluffing with.
It is the stone worst.
That's a very bad feeling. But if you really break down Urbanovich's range here of the hands that he's going to bet, assuming he's a capable player, and based on his recent results, he very much is a capable player.
Yeah.
Queen high is one of the last hands he's going to bet here because he has clear showdown value against some missed flush draws and some other gut shots like Jack 10 that Seidel could have here.
Right.
So he doesn't want to bet that and get called by 6s because it seems really unlikely, especially for this size bet, that Seidel's ever folding a pair of any kind on this board.
Yeah, Seidel's just always going to call with the 6 here because the only thing, if we're going to do as Grant said and break down value and bluffs, there's just not that much value in Dzmitry's range, and the value that's there is trying to get value out of a 6 specifically most of the time.
Right. So we're going to assume throughout this discussion that Urbanovich is expecting with this size bet that he's going to get called by a 6.
Yeah.
So let's think about it. What would Urbanovich bet for value? Clearly, any ace he wants to bet for value.
Of course.
So would he get here with an ace?
Rarely. Really, really rarely, right? Usually if he has an ace, he's going to raise pre-flop. He only has 17 blinds coming into the hand, so that could change it a little bit. He might be deciding to limp and then re-raise if Erik raises him. That's possible. But most of the time, he's just going to raise pre-flop if he has an ace in his hand.
Right. Just hope to get it in as soon as he possibly can in the hand and hope he holds up with his ace or somehow sucks out if he's behind.
Yep.
Because 17 blinds is not enough to play with. It's not enough to get too tricky. The only thing, like Jonathan said, would be to try to limp 3-bet shove with an ace. But Seidel's not really a player who's going to be raising as a bluff that often out of the big blind heads up.
Agreed. Especially with the stack sizes be what they are, 17 blinds to 41 blinds. It's just not a spot, I think, where you want to mess around too much if you're Seidel. You just want to make a hand and win.
Right, so we can mostly discount aces as value hands for Urbanovich. So that leaves mostly kings.
Right, which is reasonable.
Kings
he can have
are
kings.
Reasonable.
Some kings.
Same thing, though, is the problem is that he's usually going to raise most of his kings pre-flop.
I mean, certainly all the good ones, right?
Right. You would assume king 9, king 10, king jack, king queen are all raises pre-flop.
Yeah, and probably most of the suited kings, if not all of those, are raises too, right?
So maybe he has king 4, king 5, something like that.
Yeah, he could have that.
Maybe even up to king 8.
King 6.
Yeah, and that would certainly be something that would be worth a value bet here. It sucks when Seidel turns over a better king sometimes, which is possible the way the hand played out, but it's just too valuable of a hand to check back on this river if you're Urbanovich.
Yeah, I mean, you got to figure the majority of Urbanovich's value range here when he bets the river is a king.
Right. It is usually not an ace because of what we discussed. And we assume Urbanovich is probably not betting a 6 because Seidel has kings in his range and he could be valuing himself. Seidel's also calling with a 6 pretty much 100% of the time on this size bet on this board, and all 6s are chopping that aren't 2-pair.
Right. You can't get value out of another 6 anyway. Seidel almost never has a 5 and is calling with a 5, so we're just not going to bet a 6 very often here.
Right.
If
so
ever.
This narrows Urbanovich's value range mostly to just kings and sometimes slow-played aces.
Right.
So what's his bluff range here?
Let's see. Flush draws and missed gut shot, jack high gut shots, I guess.
Not
sometimes.
Jack high gut shot, maybe. That's what Seidel has to worry about.
Yeah.
Is a jack high gut shot.
The jack 10. That's it, right? Jack 10. That's the one hand.
Right, but other than that, his bluffs include missed flush draws, also just any random 2 cards. We talk about this in depth on the podcast, but it's pretty clear that it's not clear, but it seems likely that Urbanovich would be raising most of his Broadway cards pre-flop. And the hands that he's going to be limping with are going to be connected type hands, such as, your 3-4s, your 8-9s, your 7-8s. Some of those will contain a 5 or a 6, but those are not going to be bets on the river because it's not really an effective bet in either way. So a lot of his hands that are bluffs are going to be 10-9, 10-8, 8-9, 3-4, 2-4, all those types of hands.
Yeah.
And those make a lot of sense for him to get here in this way, decide to try to win on the turn, decide on the river. Seidel could have missed either of the flush draws and try to win there.
And let's not forget, too, Seidel's getting a pretty great price here. Urbanovich bets a little less than half the pot, which means Seidel only has to be right about a little less even, one every 3 times. It's not so bad. So he can call here, be wrong, and it can still be the right play, which is important.
Right, I agree. And due to Urbanovich's value range being so thin, I think, and of course this is with all the information, it seems like a call is in order.
Erik Seidel. Dzmitry had a pretty passive line, then started betting turn and river. Erik might not think there's a lot of value in his range, and that there must be a lot of bluffs in there for him to even be thinking about this.
I still can't quite believe he is thinking about calling this. He's called with jack high.
Makes a call I wouldn't make,
And he's right.
and wins a pot I wouldn't win, in a tournament I would never be in.
Wow, behold the master at work.
That was a hero call gone right. If you guys want to see a hero call gone wrong, check out Daniel Coleman's hero call by clicking here.
Also, check out our Twitter feed, our website, and don't forget to subscribe.